Welcome to Real Vision. I'm Ash Bennington. Today, we're talking about Axie Infinity, the play-to-earn model and blockchain gaming with Jeff Zirlin, co-founder of Sky Mavis. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let me give our viewers some context about how we met. So it's late October. There's a huge conference called NFT.NYC. People are super pumped up about it. It's the only conference I've ever been to where people are cheering, waiting in line to get their badges, right? So the conference starts and there are all these crazy parties you hear about, like from the night before or whatever. And one day I'm on the conference floor and this guy walks up to me. He's actually a guy from France who recognizes me from a Real Vision show. And he says, I have to come to the Axie Infinity party. It's way out in Brooklyn, he says, but you got to come. So long story short, I jump on the subway. I go out to like industrial Brooklyn. It's broad daylight, like late afternoon. I'm wandering around this industrial neighborhood. I have no idea where I am. And there's this huge, totally jacked guy wearing a mask sitting on a stool in front of a warehouse. He looks at me and he says, what are you looking for? And I say, Axie? And he says, yeah, go in. I walk down this dark corridor and this is what I see. Moral of the story, for people in the community, Axie is a very big deal. We're going to unpack that today, talk all about Axie, talk all about your background. So let's jump in and get started. Tell us the story about how you got into this space.
So personally, I was never interested in crypto when it was just about the Bitcoin speculation. I already knew how to trade options. So if it was just about making or losing a lot of money really quickly, that wasn't too interesting to me. But I've always been a gamer. I've always been a collector. So in December of 2017, there was a project called CryptoKitties, and myself and a lot of the Sky Mavis, early team members, we actually met playing CryptoKitties, right? And CryptoKitties was an interesting model where, right, for the first time, it seemed like you didn't actually need a technical background to, right, jump into a project and participate. It was CryptoKitties was obviously like this very simple proof of concept, but I think the thought process really started there, right? Where it was like, okay, what if there was a game that you could actually, right, create NFTs by playing and actually, right, earn, potentially earn, right? So we started thinking about how you could actually create a model that would actually be sustainable and last for, years and decades rather than a couple of weeks, right? Which is what happened with CryptoKitties. So, I actually met the original, some of the original team members of Sky Mavis while playing CryptoKitties, and then so Axie was actually created by two Vietnamese childhood friends, Trung and Masamune. They're geniuses, right? So Trung is an amazing engineer, and Masamune is an artist, and he, grew up creating games. Actually, as kids in Vietnam, I think because it was difficult for them to read the English, on the Pokemon cards and stuff like that, they actually ended up creating their own card games, right? Drawing cards and then giving them out to their friends and playing these games with their childhood friends. So these are the two original founders of Axie Infinity. I actually discovered the project as a community member in March of 2018. Right, I was immediately drawn to the art. This idea of being able to battle NFTs I thought was really compelling, right? True utility. I just fell in love with the project, started trying to help, and things really snowballed from there.
So let's unpack this a little bit. Talking about NFTs obviously at the very heart of what makes Axie a game, a project, and something that's so interesting to people. Let's give a little bit of a context, a little bit of a framework for how NFTs are at the heart of this project.
So Axies are digital pets. They're kind of cute. They look like chubby axolotls. And each Axie has a genetic code. There are actually 8 distinct genes that determine the physical characteristics of each Axie. Those characteristics also determine, right, what they can do in battle, right? So we have a card battle game. So in that game, You can the genes determine what cards each Axie actually can play in that battle system. So each Axie is an NFT. You can earn in-game resources by playing the game. Like in many games, the key difference is that with our game, right, these resources are tokenized, right? So you can earn something called Smooth Love Potion, which is actually used to breed Axies, right? So you actually need to earn these by playing the game if you want to create more Axies, right? And this is important because the only way to get Axies is to actually buy them from the secondary market. So, right, you play the game, you earn these tokens, you can use those tokens to breed more Axies, and you can sell those Axies to people who want more Axies or people who are entering the ecosystem, right? So it's kind of a new model where the players have actually become the distribution arm, right? Each Axie player is theoretically a digital pet store owner, right? And it has their own little operation. There are other elements. We have a governance token, the Axis token. This can also be earned by playing the game. You can get it by creating content. You can also just buy it, and basically Axie has done $3.8 billion in NFT marketplace volume. 4.25% of that volume, right, of each marketplace transaction gets sent to a community treasury. And that treasury is actually governed by the Axis token holders, right? So Sky Mavis, the inventors, the creators of the game, we only own around 20%, right? So the other 80% is owned by the community. So that's why, right, this is really, right, a first iteration of a community-driven, community-owned game.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned those numbers because I want to give our viewers a sense of the scale of this project. Talk about the size in terms of number of users, in terms of transaction volume per day, in terms of the key metrics that you look at to understand how Axie is doing.
So there are 3 million people who own Axies, 2.5 million daily active players. 50% of them have never used crypto before. 25% don't have a bank account. So we're really getting it into the hands of the people that need this technology the most. There are around 60,000 people who are staking the Axis token. We have a leaderboard system where, right, like players can actually earn our governance token by placing at the top of the leaderboard. So that goes out to 1,000 people. Perhaps by the time this interview comes out, it'll be much more. We're looking at expanding the leaderboard to something like the top 200,000 or 300,000 as well.
So these are very impressive numbers for people who are hearing about this maybe for the first time. It's a significant community that you guys have built. One of the things that interests me is the way that you think about this and the way that you've spoken about Axie in the past. You've talked about how Axie to you is much more than a game. It has aspects of a digital economy, aspects almost of a digital nation state. Give us your framework for how you think about what Axie is becoming.
So Axie is far more than a game, right? Of course, there are elements of an amazing game that people find extremely fun and engaging. But right, Axie also has its own growing economy. It has its own culture. We even have our own kind of language that's developing, right? Like if you talk to an Axie player and they speak to you like you're another Axie player, but you might not understand what they're talking about, right? So you have, right, Axie citizens, when they go out into the physical world, right, they have to, explain Axie in a way that's more, I guess, palatable or like understandable to everyday people. So we have a lot of the elements of a society, right? And I think it's interesting in that we've started to see the rise of grassroots internet communities, and Axie, I think, is that to a supercharged level because you have this economic engine attached to it, where, right, people, right, like they're able to sustain themselves in many cases. They're creating, really strong friendships. They're having fun. So it's in some ways, right, it's fulfilling a lot of the hierarchy of needs.
So one of the things that's really interesting in the way that you talk about Axie, as you just said earlier, you refer to Sky Mavis not as the company, but as the group that originally created Axie. Give our viewers a sense of what that means. You've talked about how you guys only own about 20% of Access. That's the AXS token. Give us a sense of what that means, because this is a project that you've talked more about decentralizing in future years.
Axie is, a living, breathing ecosystem that's constantly evolving over time. I think we see ourselves as the inventors, the birthers, or the ones that have hatched this ecosystem, this nation. But this is going to be a really long journey, right? We're, in many cases, right, like we can see ourselves as the founders of this nation, but long term, it's going to be important, right? Just like with America, right? Like that it can keep going on in our absence, right? So we're already preparing for that, eventual future, which is something that we have to build towards. It's just basically, right, the community is already very crucial to the building process, right? They're our distribution arm, right? But in the future, it's not going to be possible for Sky Mavis to build all the content that's needed for the community. So we have to, right, open up all the data, make it super easy for anyone, anywhere to build on top of our IP and create new, fun, and engaging experiences. So, right, there is this element of, right, a community built and community driven game, but we have to build towards that. It can't be from the start, right? We saw that with a couple of projects that have tried to do this, and basically without any direction in the early days, basically things just devolve into chaos and drama.
So this is a really fascinating point because it's such a dramatic transition from the model that most people, when you think of the intellectual property owned by a company, have in terms of a conception of the way something like this works. So, on the one hand, it's a really cool game. People relate to the NFTs. They like them. They think they're really cool. They're really cute. But bigger picture, this is a huge shift in the way that ecosystems like Axie work. For example, if you were an early user of Facebook, you got bragging rights. You got to say, well, I've been a member of Facebook since year X and I was on before you. But the equity of Facebook still belonged to the founder of Facebook, some of the venture capitalists who invested early in the company, and in the original management team, or people who got stock, founder stock at the time that the company was created. This is just a very different way to think about how to organize productive assets.
This is the future that we're living in, right? Where these communities have real stake in ownership of the products that they use on a daily basis. It's like it's I think the natural progression, and we're starting to see, right, this harmony between the creators, the inventors, and the users, rather than a antagonistic relationship where sometimes, right, the incentives can be misaligned really dramatically.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.